Years ago, I worked for a third world help organization. We collected monies in Germany for people who were starving, especially in places like Africa, different places of the world where terrible things are happening, just like right now. And we would collect these monies to bring help to those people in those third world areas. And I can remember one day at the office that somebody gave a devotion. One of my bosses, Mr. Sigmund, he gave this devotion and he spoke on the basis of the story I'm going to read here in a few minutes, the feeding of the 5,000. And at the conclusion of his devotion, he said something to the effect, boy, isn't it wonderful that under these circumstances, people came with their lunch boxes, their prepared lunches, and they opened up their lunch boxes, they opened up their bags or baskets of food, and they shared them with everyone around them. And that's the great miracle that people are at times filled with benevolence, and they open up their lunch boxes and they share. Now, I want to tell you something. Back then already, I knew that was rank heresy. This is the feeding of the 5,000, and we want to give glory to our God who has revealed himself in Jesus Christ. This is an important miracle. It's listed in all four of the Gospels, but we're going to be reading it from the Gospel of St. Mark, and that's going to be taken from chapter 6, beginning with verse 32. Once again, I'm Pastor Krause, Christ Lutheran Church in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Here is what we read in this section of the Word. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away, so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, You give them something to eat. They said to him, That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. Once again, it's an important miracle. It's listed in all 4 of the Gospels. Some of the unique things here in Mark is that, to go over the story just very briefly, Jesus is teaching people in the surrounding towns. Bethsaida, Capernaum, maybe had just 2,000 or 3,000 people living in them. We're told here there were 5,000 men, and besides that, there were women and children. There could have been 10 or 15,000 people there. And they're coming to hear the teaching of Jesus. More and more people are coming out. Jesus is at the pinnacle of his fame. They're coming out and they're hearing about this, and then the question of the disciples, these people need to eat. Where are we going to get enough food for 10, 15,000 people? And I think it's sort of ironic. Jesus looks at them and says, You give them something to eat. Well, disciples, lack of faith, huh? What does he mean? You give them something to eat. And then they count up how much is there, and they're told there's 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish amongst 15,000 people, perhaps. What's that? And we're told here, this is unique in the Gospel of Mark especially, that the people are sort of put out like garden plots. In a garden we go, there are the melons, there's the corn, there's the tomatoes, there's the leeks, whatever we have, and they're put into these different little patches. The people are separated by 50s and 100s. They're set there on the side of the hill. And then the distribution of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. The people eat and they are filled. And afterwards, there are 12 probably wicker baskets. Normally they're on some kind of trip outside of town. They'd carry a wicker basket with them so that they could have food and the like. Well, the 12 disciples gather up 12 baskets full of leftovers of bread and fish. What a miracle. God fed his people. You give them something to eat. And they did. And they were filled. Why, our God is such a awesome God. We think of this miracle. We think how Jesus has fed us physically throughout our lives. God has been so good to us. And God also feeds us spiritually. He gives us the good news, the message of forgiveness, the message of his love. In good days and in bad days, good times and in terrible times, Jesus and his love for us is there. Jesus fills you every day. Give glory to him and bless his holy name.